Hello and welcome to Nerdarchy, for nerds by nerds. I'm Nerdicus Dave, and today I am joined by Rich Lescouflair from Alligator Alley Entertainment. I love the name of your company.
Almost like a tongue twister, right?
It's like a tongue twister, but also I just like alligators and crocodiles. They just always look so happy when they're out there sunning themselves, waiting for someone to go by so they can like snack on a leg or something.
Gotta feed them once in a while.
So if you could be so kind to kind of introduce yourself and tell people a little bit about you before we jump on in.
Okay. Hi everyone. I am Rich Lescouflair. I am a game publisher and graphic designer. I am managing partner of Alligator Alley Entertainment. I am the lead designer of the Esper Genesis role-playing game, which is the sci-fi setting and rule system for 5th edition. I also do a lot of writing and layout work for D&D Adventures League and a number of other publishers.
Yeah, I actually bring up Esper Genesis fairly often because when talking about like 5e hacks, you got a good one, and it looks very pretty.
I'd like to think so.
Yeah. So do you ever have alligators show up in your yard?
Nope. I don't live that close to the swamp.
Bummer. So you don't get you don't. My wife and kids used to watch. I don't know if you've seen the show Gator Boys all the time.
No, can't say I have.
So it's these crazy guys that like do alligator rescue, but like they catch them by hand and like wrestle them and stuff to take them away to their reserve. Yeah.
Oh, so
including getting into the water.
Random stupidity on camera is
yeah. I think isn't this just normal Florida stuff though?
I hate to disappoint you, but it is not.
Yeah.
Actually, probably in some parts of Florida, I'd say it might be, but definitely not here.
Yeah.
No. We have. Sorry, go ahead.
I have a friend that does pest control, so I'm always sending them like clips from that show.
Okay.
And gifts from that show.
I was visiting a friend of mine further north. Where they were in Titusville, and like we went to like the super Walmart there, and there was just an alligator right by the front door, just happened to be wandering by. And what do people do? They're not running.
No,
they're not. Oh my god! Like someone's calmly talking on the phone while other people are just going to the other door, and walking past like where the gator is, and I'm like, all right,
Florida, and you're from the Northeast, Florida. Right? So you're like, yo, there's like a dinosaur right there.
Yeah. Yeah, the worst thing we have to worry about is like rats. The alligator in the sewer thing, that's a myth.
Yeah.
But we have big lizards though. We have the iguanas around here now.
Oh yeah, they've like become an invasive species, right?
Yeah. There's hundreds of them everywhere. They're just kind of laying in the grass on the street, sunning like, "Hey, what's up?"
I know I'm not from here, but I am now. Yeah, what are you gonna do? So what's new in the world of Alligator Alley Entertainment?
We just launched a Kickstarter last week. It is called Expedition from the Mysterious Peaks. And what it is, I actually probably, the really funny thing is when I was building the Kickstarter, the very first thing was I had to when I was filling out the FAQ, the very first question I put down before anybody asked it is this expedition to the Barrier Peaks? And the answer is no, it's not. But it's kind of like a spiritual sequel. When Barrier Peaks was my favorite D&D adventure, or one of my favorite D&D adventures, the old S3 one, and I love fantasy. I love sci-fi. It's pretty obvious by the content that we produce. And I thought, when we ran Barrier Peaks when I was a kid, I kind of wanted to do sort of like a camping continuation of it, because it's not like the stuff just disappears after it's gone.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm like, well, what happens with all this stuff? Like, what happens like when years start passing by? And I said, well, I have a sci-fi game now. Barrier Peaks was supposed to be kind of like the bridge to Metamorphosis Alpha when that was coming out when it was originally written. So my thought was, well, let me build like a adventure saga using Barrier Peaks as like a background lore and
Yeah.
create a setting around it and create like this really big adventure that can bridge fantasy 5e to sci-fi 5e, kind of like the original module was supposed to.
Yeah, that was definitely on my list of questions list of questions to ask. Because obviously that conjures up that imagery right away, and I imagined it wasn't by accident either. So
No, definitely not.
yeah.
Fully intentional. The title was intended to kind of call back to that stuff, and anybody looking at it can kind of infer, oh, it's that kind of thing where the fantasy and the sci-fi bridge together into something really cool and unique.
So what is the impetus of this project? What can people expect from it?
Well, it's intended on being like a 300 plus page adventure series that runs the entire gamut of like tier 1 through 4 content, and we're including a brand new setting that's um, well, the main setting is two different areas. One is the Veiled Realms, which is an area that's recovering from a magical cataclysm, and it's the Primarchs there kind of fought amongst themselves, and they're using the technology, which is really to them magical artifacts, to um, to revive their lands. And there's a whole bunch of intrigue between these lands, and there's a lot of stuff going on. This setting is on a planet that's actually in the Eldor star system, which is your sci-fi side of it, and that has a lot of stuff going on that I can't really I'm going to leave that open, because that would give away a lot to anybody that's actually intending on playing the game.
Yeah, you don't want
But
spoilers.
the campaign is intended on starting from two different fronts. You can play a group of fantasy characters that are dealing with what's going on in the Veil Realms, and you also have a crew of sci-fi explorers that pick up a beacon that's emanating from the old ship that crashed into the barriers like generations ago. And those two stories connect, and they eventually intertwine into kind of like a sci-fantasy adventure series. So that's the major overview of it. And we set it up so that you can play it with 5e, D&D rules. You can play it with the basic rules if you want, or you can, if you just have the Esper Genesis books, you can play it with the Esper Genesis books. Or the final option is you can take all of the rules and just kind of open up whatever character options you want and play that.
So is like kind of the idea like this is just another world in like the Esper Genesis setting that has not evolved with technology yet, and meeting on two fronts. Like if you're playing from the Esper Genesis side, like they're discovering this world. If you're playing from the 5e kind of just traditional fantasy side of things, it's like here's the fantasy world you live on. Here's the things that are going on.
Mm-hmm. And you don't need either to play. You can play the whole thing with one or the other or both. The way that we wanted to write it is so that even if you're yes, the star system is a part of the Esper Genesis setting, but it doesn't have to be. Esper Genesis was written itself so that you don't even have to use the setting material. So it's more along the lines of, instead of it being part of the Esper Genesis setting, this is part of your 5e setting, but it's in space with a star system with things out there.
So it's a whole campaign path, but does it also introduce other things um, into the game from that setting that are like specific to the setting, new mechanics and rules?
Yes, it includes a. We have a lot of campaign specific um, content, including subclasses. There are new species that we're introducing. We're introducing a lot of different character options as far as gear is concerned. Some of it is incorporated from the Esper Genesis Master Technician's Guide, but we're doing it in the we're sort of half converting it so that it can be used with just the D&D fantasy rules, so that it's streamlined into both games to make that easy. And we're also introducing what we call origin templates, which are kind of like I guess you know what monster templates are in the monster manual, like that sort of thing. We decided to do that, but for characters. It's almost like taking backgrounds and expanding them out into like universal plug and play character options that you could put with your
That
character
sounds
depending on
like
where they come from.
that sounds like what I wish they would do for Strixhaven instead of what they are doing. Yeah, like 5e's like 5e has this great modular feel to it that you can like add and take away components, and they kind of fit nicely. That the design team really has deemed mostly to not use or do anything with since its inception. And like, Strixhaven, they're like, we're introducing the most powerful backgrounds yet. Like, oh, so you're breaking your own mechanics instead of just like doing something that might be a little bit more elegant.
I can't really, I can't pass judgment on any of it because I
Yeah.
honestly haven't seen any of the Strixhaven stuff.
Yeah, I haven't seen it. I've just seen the chatter about it, and like that was the state. Like that was kind of like the statement from Jeremy Crawford. Whenever I see third
Okay.
party stuff that involves a background, and I'm like, if it gives you any real mechanical benefit, I'm like garbage. Just because that's not what the backgrounds do, and
It's not
that's
what the
not
backgrounds do. Yeah.
yeah, like
Yeah.
it's meant to be kind of like an exploration or a social engagement that you could benefit
Mm-hmm.
from, but like they cause you to play the game instead of just getting something for having
No, the origin templates that we have are again they're dynamic, so
it.
they do incorporate a background, so it is that sort of social aspect to it. In the technician's guide, we also went big into expanding lifestyles, which was like really sort of like a sidebar to backgrounds in the player's handbook. And we
Yeah. How
kind
much
of
money does it cost? Do you spend
we
on living every day?
yeah we incorporated the lifestyle aspect into that, and we also instead of like providing mechanics out of the background, it's almost like you have this background, so or you have this origin template, so the origin template allows you to take this mechanical option
Mm-hmm.
and either customize or like switch out a mechanic that you already possess. So it's not like a power creep or anything like that. You're really just sort of altering your the mechanics of your character and making it unique versus the standard template that you've been given.
I'm not inherently against power creep either, to be honest with you. It's just a matter of how it's implemented. And like
Yeah.
if as a new system that is added to the old system, I think it works fine, right? Like this the origin system you described seems like that would be fine to me. It's but when it changes the dynamic of an existing component of the game
Mhm.
and makes it so like who would ever choose any of these old options when you have this new one?
Yeah.
It kind of like
Yep.
nullifies them. But that's a whole nother tangent for another time.
That's hey, we can go on about that for
Just a grumpy old guy on the internet.
gonna start delving into old editions of D&D.
Why?
Why?
Get off my lawn. Where's my pants? So are any of your new species are they inspired by alligators?
No, they are not. We actually already have space samurai lizards. So I mean, those are those can be pretty alligator oriented. I think I don't know, but yeah, we do have some other species that are inspired by beasts. I'm going to leave it at that. Again,
Nice.
someone was actually asking me about it in like messages on the Kickstarter, and I'm like, yes, and here's the detail, but I'm just not really providing any more detail because that opens
So
up.
are they player options, or is it something that you discovered during play?
Oh, no. These are player options
Yeah.
that we're introducing right off the bat. We want to do two things. We want to give everyone their like fantasy fill and their sci-fi fill, and at the same time provide setting stuff that's unique to the setting, to the campaign itself, so that after the campaign is over, there's still so much content where the game master can go, you know what, I just want to run a campaign here
Yeah.
with this stuff. I'm just going to roll with this, and I already have like custom stuff in the book where players can just create their own characters and roll with the story and just let it go. The world and the system is we want to set it up that way because of two things. One, we actually have content that's outside of the adventure setting that we've already done. I mentioned Tales and Tomes for the Forbidden Library, which
Yes.
was our last Kickstarter, and the area where that is set, which is Hearthglow Academy, is actually on that same world. So there's like connections between that academy and the storyline that goes into Expedition. This is also the same world or adjacent in either case, where we're also putting the Demon Vein Chronicles, which was something I'd started working on a very long time ago, but we never really expanded on. So the more by introducing this setting content, it'll be, game masters will have this stuff, they'll be able to run the campaigns, and then when we introduce other things that are related to the same world, they'll just even have more to pile on it.
When you further develop more things that are on the fantasy side of the spectrum, if you do, is the plan to kind of keep just like fleshing out this area of like kind of like the Esper Genesis worlds?
No. You mean the Esper Genesis worlds? Well, yes, only because we do want to put it in and say, hey, this is part of the Esper Genesis, galaxy or the Esper Genesis universe. Because not only does it make it easy for Esper Genesis game masters to say, well, this is now a world that I'm sticking into the galaxy that I've already done. I already have my other galactic sectors done and fleshed out, and I can interconnect them. It's also completely optional, right? It's a fantasy setting, so really you can go out as far as you want, but you can still contain that fantasy setting right there, and technically plug it into any galaxy. We created Esper Genesis to be completely modular. We gave you a setting, you don't really have to use it.
So Parks wants to know: is there an abducted and raised by aliens one of the origin templates?
Again, you're asking me for detail. All right, fine. So it's abducted and raised by aliens. I'm going to leave it as yes. It's not exactly called to. It's not called that or referred to as that specifically, but yes, there is something very much like that. As far as the origin templates, good call, because that was one of the first ideas that we had. Like, oh yeah. Again, you just have to infer, right? What happens after an alien spaceship crash lands on a planet? Lots of things.
I don't remember Esper Genesis. Does Esper Genesis have a magic system, or was that kind of replaced? Like, I know you use like talents, right? That are kind of like
it
spells.
does. Yeah, we took the magic system, and we had separated it into talents, which uses points to channel energy, and techniques, which works more like the standard 5e spell slot system, but uses like technical magic drones and lasers and things like that.
Yeah, so it uses technology instead of like magic for their classes. So it's very
Yep.
much more like
Well,
science fiction.
yep. The techniques are more machinery and those uh, either anything mechanical or chemistry related or that kind of thing. And then the talents we did were we separated into telekinetics, elemental stuff, psionics, and things like that. Instead of using the magical schools, we created these domains where everything's kind of this. There's the sci-fi version of this kind of magic. There's the
Yeah.
version of this kind of magic.
Do you plan to at some point add magic back in?
Well, technically, we are. uh, right now, there are going to be wizards and sorcerers and clerics on in the expedition from the Mysterious Peaks, and they are all going to have their own selection of new spellcasting abilities and such that are directly related to the setting. So yeah, we're expanding a little bit of both. So we're going to give a new set of spells and introduce like things that can fit into the existing magic schools or possible like branches of domains. And then on the other side, say hey, these are the subclasses that we're introducing for SP Genesis. Here are some new talents. Here are some new techniques.
So, I gather this is kind of like a meeting of two worlds when you play through this campaign.
Mhm.
So when you go from the Esper Genesis side of things, is magic supposed to be this kind of the same as, the fantasy side meeting, technology for the first time?
Functionally, for the most part, yeah, yeah. The one promise we're still going with the same promise that we made from the point that we started building Esper Genesis is we wanted to make it a 5e game to where anybody that opens it up can look at the rules and go, oh, this is how this works. This is how I'm going to do it. Whether it's talents and techniques, yeah, the talents are a little bit different because now it uses like a point system and you can kind of gain more points with a special ability, but it's still defined as a spell or a power with an activation time and an effect and all that. So
But not from game
whatever
sense.
you're
I mean
reading
more
a
like from a
power.
narrative
Oh, okay.
sense.
Okay. Well, from a narrative sense, yeah, they're going to be uh, they're going to be different in how
Like
in
if I'm
how
playing a
powers are
character that just
derived.
came off a starship, right?
Uh
And I
huh.
see someone cast fireball, it should be like, wow, that shouldn't be that shouldn't happen. That's not real. Magic is not a thing. Is that the
Yeah.
impression if you're from Esper
Yeah. Magic.
Genesis?
Yeah, magic being like this legendary thing where sure I actually probably even more odd I guess from a sci-fi standpoint would be clerical magic. I worship this invisible almighty up there who grants me these mystical powers that I use that would be completely foreign to an Esper Genesis character. Like, wait, what?
Yeah.
Um,
I call BS.
I have my box.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
have my box of tools. Does that do anything? Yeah, exactly. There's that being able to cast a fireball. You can kind of look at it from the reverse standpoint, right? And say, oh, okay, what kind of device is this wizard wearing that
Yeah.
that, that allows them to throw balls of fire, or are they carrying a flamethrower? I don't know. Where can I find
Yeah, I'm just thinking like they meet the character that tells them that he or she's a wizard, and they're like,
it?
yeah, whatever. And then he does something magical, and they're like, oh, wait a minute. And then they're looking
Yeah,
for,
hold
like you
on.
said, the device. How did he do that?
Yeah, yeah, they're looking for the scientific explanation
Then they
behind
start trying to
behind
Penn
the
and
magic.
Teller it.
Yep. Mythbusters.
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. The whole campaign gets derailed as the characters decided to go on this MythBusters quest to try and debunk all the magic of the world.
Does magic exist? The next episode, someone pulls out a camera, and then the whole campaign goes.
So, how long have you guys been working on this project?
The concept I actually had sitting. I don't know. I guess slowly growing in my brain. Ever since we finished. Ever since we were working on Esper Genesis. And in the Technician's Guide, which was the last book we released a few months ago, I had put in a section about incorporating different types of sci-fi genre, and something in there was sci-fantasy, which I was very interested in working on, but I didn't want to do it until Esper Genesis was done, until the core rules were out and everything was out. I was like, this is going to sit and wait in the background. So it's been there for a couple of years, and I've been adding ideas and adding ideas and adding ideas until I get to the point where, okay, I'm done. I can now launch this thing. I am a very big Phantasy Star fan. There's that. I had my brain. I was talking about that yesterday. My brain immediately goes to like Final Fantasy VI. Like the whole Magitech vibe, and just my favorite stuff. And I'm like, I can do this. I can do this with both rules, and it'll be great. And I want to make it universal so that anybody can play it.
So, what size book are you shooting for?
It's going to be at least 300 pages. It's going to be a pretty big book.
And stuff. And what do you think the split's going to be between like adventure and setting material?
I would give it. So the plan. This is just the plan. I can't make promises as to the final product because we haven't hit all our stretch goals yet. So I'm not exactly sure how much setting content is going into it, but there's a fair amount. I would give it about 80-20 adventure setting. Now, mind you, a lot of the setting. I'm not sure if that's a fair question because a lot of the setting is in the adventure content, right?
Yeah.
When you go to a new location, you're going to get the setting content that's in there already while you're playing. So it's a hard measurement to make.
Yeah. No, that's a fair statement there.
I will say though that whatever we're adding on, if we surpass our page count, which is highly likely, we already have, we kind of have like a bonus bestiary and NPC PDF that we're going to be giving out to everyone that like includes like extra monsters and extra NPC organizations and extra lore that you can use for the campaign in addition to, after you finish the adventure series.
So I'm looking at the contributors to the project and the design team. It looks like we've had about half of these people on the show.
Yep.
You got a little bit of a who's who going on.
Oh, I mean, they're all. I've worked with almost all of them. They all produce wonderful content. They all love the gaming community and have done tons and provided tons of great things for everyone that plays D&D or any other role-playing game. And I know they're good people and I know they do excellent work, and so I
didn't think you'd bring on people you thought sucked.
I feel myself sure. no, but like I actually feel extremely lucky.
Yeah.
To be able to go to people like this and ask them and say, hey, I have this great project, would you like to do something for it? And just for them to say, sure, I'll help, or sure, yes, that sounds great, is something that we did not have when I was first doing Esper Genesis, actually.
Well, you built up the foundation really excited. And the rep, so now you get to take advantage of it, which is cool. And also, like, the industry is really small, so we have the benefit of being able to get to know all these people, and it is a great industry in that regards.
It is, yeah, and everybody there is there because they love gaming, they love playing, and they love seeing other people have fun playing. So, what's better than that?
So Brian Smith has some questions. I'm not 100% sure I have a good grasp on the game or what it would play like. What would be a game in the system? What would the game in the system feel like? Any movie or show to compare it to that could explain to a new group?
Ooh, any movie or show? uh Not sure if I go with a movie or a show, I would probably lean more towards um like certain Final Fantasy games. I guess
Right.
I would bear a comparison to as far as shows are concerned. Um,
I
there's
feel
so
like
many
a little
books
bit
that
of
I could. There's
Babylon
so many books that I
5.
could. Yeah, there are so many books I can refer to, but yeah,
Yeah.
Babylon 5 is really more sci-fi than fantasy. That's kind of why actually we wanted to do this project. There's not enough of it, in my
Yeah.
opinion. Um, you can go into the as far as a concept is concerned. You can refer to books like the Shannara series, for example, which is kind of like a fantasy post-apocalyptic version of like a former sci-fi world. I guess that would be like another really good example to use.
Yeah, so I mean, so you have you actually have the project, the current project that's out right now on Kickstarter, um, Expedition from Mysterious Peaks, which is an adventure, and it's it's like the Barriers adventure, kind of, um,
Mm-hmm.
and it's it's a fantasy game, but from the Esper Genesis side of things, it is a
It is.
sci-fi
It is
game.
actually. Yeah, it is actually both. It is a fantasy game, and it does. So it's either a fantasy adventure series that ventures out into space, or it's a sci-fi series that goes on to like a mythical, fantasy planet. We wanted to work both ways. If anyone's curious as to how Aspergenesis itself works, I guess probably the comparison to that would be we incorporated like a lot of space opera stuff. Mass Effect is a probably a very big influencer. Star Wars, the Fantasy Star series. So anyone looking into that sort of thing
So
would definitely get the Aspergenesis vibe.
for Esper Genesis, like if I had to compare it to a show, I'd probably go like Farscape or something along those lines, where you have like
Yeah, that's a good one.
a pretty diverse cast and like you could run those style adventures. But then there's definitely some like similarities between like Deep Space Nine and Star Trek. I feel like if you grungy those up a little bit, Firefly, if it wasn't just like all humans,
Mm-hmm.
and like I said, Babylon 5 is another good one. Like they, all those could kind of have a little bit of the feel, but no one of them really calls it out specifically. I feel like Farscape might get the closest.
As far as TV shows, Farscape would probably get the closest. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We successfully did what exactly what I wanted when I was first describing the game. Was I wanted somebody to be able to open the book and flip through it and recognize something that calls back to like something that they like out of sci-fi,
Yeah.
and that thing will be different for every person that opens and flips through the book.
Because like in Esper Genesis, isn't it like everything's kind of like somewhat normal, and then these artifacts show up, these humongous artifacts that are like objects in space that are
For the humans, yeah, the
yeah,
the, the galaxy's been around for eons,
yeah,
and some of the spacefaring uh, races are really old, and some of them are fledgling spacefarers, and particularly like the humans, for example. And yes, once they discover these artifacts, it has a profound effect on their area of space, and they become sucked into this massive galactic uh, event that's going on involving these things. You almost kind of have to get involved with everything else that's going on in the galaxy, or you won't survive.
Yeah.
Especially once the espers start coming in. Once people start going through the process of espergenesis, it's like, well, what do I do with this? and, and that calling, which is a whole separate storyline within the storyline.
So like now this particular project, this adventure is written from the standpoint of like, I guess they would probably see it as like this backwater planet that that people are still running around like apes kind of because they haven't made it past the stratosphere of the world.
Mm-hmm.
So it
It's
gives you your typical your fantasy game.
Yep, it is, and at the same time, yeah, it gives you your fantasy game. It gives you your from the sci-fi side. It's people landing on a planet where not only is their whole culture and concept, different alongside with things like magic, which the sci-fi characters do not understand, but there has to be some explanation to. It's also a large society where of people where they are playing with technological aspects of things that they don't really understand.
Yeah.
So it's from that point like, well, this is now incorporated into their society. What do we do? The sci-fi characters like, what do we do in this situation because there are bad things coming?
Well,
And
that would be interesting too from the standpoint of like the sci-fi side of things, sitting down and talking to maybe like one of the more arcane casters and they're kind of like, you just play with things you don't understand and you don't know how they work, and then after they go and explain the Esper Genesis process, they're like, wait a minute, didn't you guys do the same thing? You just call it technology.
yep.
But it's different. We know it's technology. Well, we know it's magic. So I feel like you could have some fun, interesting conversations in game about that, as well as this seems like a great adventure to like if you wanted to move your D&D game to a sci-fi game. Maybe your players aren't ready for that and they haven't really expressed any interest. As a GM, this might be a way to sneak it in on them and
Mm-hmm.
let them run their typical fantasy game, but expose them to these other elements, and then from there you can kind of cross over to, well, we could keep playing in these worlds and leave the planet if you wanted to.
Yes, and
Yeah.
because the adventure saga starts from two fronts, it kind of depends on where the story intertwines.
Yeah.
But we're leaving storytelling options open to where the GM can set up how the characters are interacting with the other genre. Are they suspicious? Are these other characters going to be viewed as the enemy? Are they working against each other? Are they going to cooperate on certain things? How is that going to work out? Because the level of trust is dependent on the level of understanding. So it kind of depends. It's going to be different for every party of adventurers or every party of espers.
Has this been something that like the Esper Genesis community's been asking for?
Um, no.
No, we've inflicted
well,
it upon them. They
well,
wanted it, they
well,
just didn't know it.
they have. I actually did a poll not too long ago on the Esper Genesis Facebook page where I asked them what they were looking for. Primarily, overwhelmingly, it was more adventure content
Mhm.
and more adventure content and more setting content. So not only are we're putting together our season 2 of Crucible Core, which is more adventure content directly for Esper Genesis, but because we're also introducing this with options that can be used also in Esper Genesis, it doesn't have to necessarily be locked to this setting. Then it opens up a new area of space for them to explore and to play some 5e fantasy stuff.
So Cups wants to know, where do mind flayers fit in, and Doug responded with, they fit right into restricted IP.
I was you that is a very good answer. They fit right into, I'm not using those two words together in a sentence.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have a Mind Flayer stand-in?
Uh so without without using the restrictive wording, there is a species that we introduced in the threats database for Espogenesis. They are called the Xenotera. They're kind of like um, a trans-dimensional spacefaring conglomerate that have that kind of Geigery, mind flayery. Oh shoot, I said it. I said it out loud. That kind of vibe, and they are very similar. In some cases, I guess you could, if you really wanted to play with that as a homebrew, connect that sort of thing. They have very much the same vibe.
Well, it's just one of those things. Like, a lot of us have been playing this game for a long time, and there's definitely some things as creators we want to use that we can't. So instead, we use them for inspiration to kind of
Mm-hmm.
guide the things that we create. And like certain monsters, like the two words we won't say together, um, fill a specific role in the D&D universe. So it only makes sense that other
Yep.
creators would mm, fill that role with their
I,
own creations.
I'm just messing around. I can say mind flayer. I watch Stranger Things. Do you watch Stranger Things? I watch Stranger
That's true. That's true.
Things.
But I also feel like the Hasbro is probably less likely to mess with them.
That's very
I
true.
mean, it's always easier to kick the little guy. We did get our first cease and desist from, was it Fox or Sony? I think it was Fox.
Oh yeah.
We had got a cease and desist way back when we had did a shirt design called Sons of Nerdarchy, and it
Ah,
was
okay.
like two goblins on their shoulders and a grim reaper. It really wasn't, but and it was satire at the very least. But
Right.
they have robots manning the internet for them.
Yeah, not worth the cease and desist in my opinion at all.
Yeah.
I I had actually gotten a cease and desist. Probably the only one that I had gotten came from. You know what? I'm not gonna. I don't like to call people out or do any of that.
Yeah.
In interviews or anything like that. But the cease and desist that I got was over something really nonsensical. It was like a title of something that we wrote that was vaguely similar but used a word that you could find in the Webster's dictionary.
Yeah.
So it was what you're calling your wait what that doesn't make any sense. So whatever
Yeah.
you do
Like, we
you.
copyrighted we copyrighted or trademarked Nerdarchy, but it's also like
Mhm.
kind of mostly a made up word.
Yeah, exactly.
Parks wants to know: are technomancy, cyborgs, and symbiotes all options?
In what?
Wherever you want to put them, or have not put them, or have put them, I guess. So we'll start with Espergenesis,
As
and then we can move, into the current project.
Okay. Okay. In Espergenesis, there are probably the closest thing to a techno cyborg that you can play are right now the Bellari, which are really more energy beings that live inside like a mechanical exosuit, a biomechanical exosuit. So there is that. There are cybernetic um, NPCs in the threats database. Yes, we are absolutely introducing a robot species and a cyborg species into Espergenesis. They're just not out yet.
Yeah, how could you not?
Yeah, exactly. You kind of have to.
So are
But
there
the
are there
and as
cybernetic
far as
equipment, like
yes,
prosthetics and stuff?
I was just about to mention that. As far as playing a cyborg is concerned, that doesn't really need to be a species. In Espergenesis, there are There is a whole slew of cybernetic implants in the Master Technician's Guide that you can incorporate into your character, and you can also build and customize drones, which you can't play, but they're kind of like your robotic companions.
Is there like a magic item equivalent in Esper Genesis, or is it all just gear?
There is we they are called core forged items. So another thing I was actually describing recently, we didn't want to go with the magic item system as it was for Esper Genesis because it just doesn't. It's not conducive to sci-fi. The +1 sword doesn't really evoke a science fiction feel. So we incorporated we converted some magic items and we created new ones into different types of gear that you can use, and we also introduced in the gear system items called mods, which you can sort of plug into other gear that gives them special features and abilities. And then the core forged items are weapons and armor and like foci, like implements that you can customize as you gain in level. So as your character grows more powerful, we have the system can work either two ways. You get these items, these special items called core stones that you can slot into your item, and the item grows in power with you. Or you can just have the option of having the item become more powerful as you develop as an Esper. I think the example that I used when I was talking about it was in Farscape. Now that you mention it, Crichton starts out. I'm just Earth astronaut guy that's stranded in the middle of the space with a bunch of aliens. He gets his favorite pistol, which for him he aptly names Winona, and he keeps that one gun throughout pretty much the entire series and becomes enormously badass with it. So and I use that as an example where you keep the same item, the item kind of gains its own prestige, I guess, in a sense, as you go up, and it becomes a better item as you become better in its use. That's the way that we tailored it.
Do you adopt the attunement system at all?
Yes. Instead of attunement, we call it affinity.
Yeah.
Because there's no I am magically bonded with this thing. It's like, really, no, you have this item and you need to become affined with it. You need to instruct yourself or practice in its use. And we also create limitations, but it's not just like you can only 3 magical things at a time. We based it on proficiency rating.
Okay, so you become more
proficiency
proficient, you get more
score.
spots.
The more proficient, the more points of proficiency that you get, the more items you'll be able to gain affinity with.
And are they generally like the items you gain affinity to? Are they generally all core forged, as you said?
No, there are specific items that you need to gain affinity. There are forms of cybernetics that you need to gain affinity with. There are things like like jetpacks and things like that you need to have affinity with in order to use. You can't just strap it on and go with it.
I imagine that part was probably hard to figure out the balance between like how because in a game like that you just expect to use more gear than like a fantasy game just because there's more stuff available.
Mm-hmm.
And like I guess in like D&D, like you can kind of rationalize the attunement slots and be like, well, you have too much magic stuff on you at one time, they start kind of interfering with each other. I feel like you could kind of do a little bit with with technology as well.
Well, we compensated for that by yes, we altered the attunement system and into the affinity system, but we also took a lot of things that I guess would be treated as magic items in D&D, and we just converted into just gear. Here, spend this money, buy this cool thing. You now have it that you can use on your character. We also put in things like armor customization. So you have your suit of armor, you can add elements to it or have it, bring it to a shop and have it altered with a particular amount of money, and you just wait a certain amount of time, and you have elements to the armor now that can also count as what would be magic items in so it's not that it's you get more out of it. It's just you have to pay money now instead of finding it in a dragon's hoard.
Well, that makes sense anyway. Like we ran a modern game, and like the warlock had more success using grenades and an AK-47 than they did using warlock stuff. And I think that's kind of what happens the more sophisticated the technology gets, the lower level power stuff starts to kind of get outshined a little bit. It's like figuring out that balance to keep everything so it's still special and still makes sense. So Parks said, first time hearing about your games, they definitely sound pretty cool and interesting. And well, Parks, as always, there's links in the description so you can check out the Kickstarter as well as the website. I highly recommend looking at, especially, the Kickstarter and the website, but you guys put together some of the best art. The Esper Genesis stuff looks fantastic. And the new project, is very similar as well. So if for nothing else, I would go look at the pretty go look at the pretty pictures.
Thank you. Yeah. I can't even take full credit for that. One of our main illustrators is just phenomenally talented, and the way that it started with the art, I just kind of threw at him a whole bunch of ideas. I'm like, I want this and this and this and this, and he comes back with this sketch, and it was kind of like, well, this is exactly what I wanted. I just didn't know that I wanted it. Let's do everything like that, just like that. That's kind of how the look of Esper Genesis developed.
So also on the Kickstarter page, if you go down to like a quarter of the way down the page, halfway down the page, you can find some downloads to check out and get an idea what Esper Genesis is. So you can kind of get a peek under the hood and see if it's something you're interested in. And those are free downloads over there, so I'd recommend people check those out if you want to learn more. So after this project's done, where do you think you'll go next?
Again, I have about a billion ideas, right?
Yeah. Do you have any other genres you want to explore? Because you've kind of tackled sci-fi, you've tackled fantasy.
I would really like to do one of two things, and I'm gonna.
Is it Esper Genesis Crime World?
No. Although that's an interesting idea, but there is an Esper Genesis crime world.
Of course there is. There's always a crime world.
There's always a crime world. There's always a galactic underworld. What are you talking about? No. I'll be as vague as possible with it because I don't exactly know how or in what context I want to do it, but I do want to do something superhero themed.
Okay.
Yeah, I want to do something superhero themed, or something like a modern tech noir horror sort of thing. Those two things interest me very much as storytelling, because the way that I put stuff together is I'm more of a storyteller.
Yeah.
I kind of started out with writing stories before I started doing any of this stuff. So I put the story together that I'm really interested in, and then I look at it and go, well, okay, how do I do this? Like, what rules can I inject into this where people would have fun doing it? That's, kind of where that's where it goes with me most of the time. So I'll start with the story first, and I'll start with the setting first, and then I'll start playing around and with pieces and see where it goes. So that's why I really don't have too much detail. I can only tell you that.
So sci-fi tech horror. That makes me think of there was a Cthulhu game. It was like futuristic and kind of like looked kind of mechish and kaiju in nature, but I don't remember what it's called. Something Cthulhu.
I was thinking about kind of with that sort of like meshing in ideas from uh, The Matrix meets Call of Cthulhu meets World of Darkness sort of,
Oh,
sort of
nice.
vibe. Uh,
What are some like non-D&D games that you draw inspiration from, if there are any?
sure. Shadowrun is probably Shadowrun was my second and most played RPG aside from D&D. Uh, the Some variations of the Star Wars and the Star Trek RPGs I do draw inspiration from. What was another one that I had played a lot, but just I mean, not enough. Uh,
Never enough.
yeah, I know it's never enough, right? We actually played the. I don't know if you ever played the Stormbringer RPG. It's an old one,
I have not.
but
That I vaguely remember those words, but I don't remember.
yeah,
I don't think I've seen that one.
it was based off of a book series that I enjoyed a lot. So we got into the RPG, which was also a lot of fun, and it introduced like a different dynamic, a different rule system.
Was it
Mecton,
based off
we
the
played
Moorcock series?
Yes, there's a Moorcock series.
Yeah, yeah, that's probably
Molybdenum.
why I'm
Yep.
familiar with the term.
Yep.
But I've never actually had a chance to check it out.
We played a Palladium. We played Palladium, which also means that we played Rifts and Robotech, and like it kind of goes along the same lines of what I'm doing right now, right?
Yeah, makes sense. It checks it out. Are there any mechs in Aspergenesis?
uh, yes. You mean as far as mechs that players can get in and pilot?
Yes.
Yes
No.
and no. So yes and no. Yes, the Master Christian's Guide allows you to build starships and star bases, so you can build whatever size ship that you want. We actually wanted to introduce the mech thing. We kind of just didn't have the space for it, but the rules are already there. So what we're actually going to do is we're going to come out with sort of like a test supplement for to use mecha. And all it really is solitary starships with arms and legs and weapons,
Yeah.
because that's really what mechs are. And we also want to introduce other rules in addition to having mechs, transformable ships, combinable ships. So if you really wanted to play that Voltron campaign really bad,
Nice.
you can do that. But yes, that's coming down the pipe for sure.
I tried selling my group on a Star Wars game. Not Star Wars, a Transformers game, and I was going to use Mutants and Masterminds to run it, but they just weren't biting. So I don't know if you played
Okay,
Mutants or Masterminds, but it's like really easy to
I
do the.
have.
Yeah, it makes it really easy to do things that change.
Yeah, yeah. Mutants and Masterminds is a lot of fun.
So, Brian Smith, I feel too overwhelmed to run a huge sci-fi setting like this. To be honest, do you have advice for running games like this?
Yep. Actually, it's really very easy. Uh, a game set in a sci-fi setting, especially a game like Esper Genesis, can be as big or as small as you want. Just because you have a sci-fi theme, it doesn't mean that you have to build an entire galaxy. You have to build like a universe or anything like that. You just need an established spot. You can run an entire campaign in a city if you
Yeah.
want, and never have to leave. Never have to leave the city. Never have to, or if you really wanted to expand out, you just like create another. Use your planet that you're working on or the world that you're on, and just have a space station up there. Now you have space with starships. It's easiest to start small and just establish your footing with where your characters are and work with the character histories and what they want to do, and just leave everything else as an option. That's the fastest way to do it.
It's very overwhelming to think about it, right? If you're thinking about like, oh, the whole galaxy, my players can
Yeah,
go anywhere if you give them a ship, right? Like, but you can make it a lot simpler than that. Like, it's the same
sure.
thing in Star Wars, right? But like, something's going on, there's a problem, and somebody has to do something about it, or that
Right.
problem, interacts. Or Star Trek, right? They always run into something in space, or they have to go to a planet to do a thing, and then the
Exactly. It
adventure
is.
starts.
Yeah, it's your campaign. So whatever you're planning as far as the adventure is concerned can be anywhere, or and you don't necessarily have to have the 5-year mission where the players can just go wherever they choose.
Yeah.
That's a, if you really want to do that, that's ambitious. I wouldn't do it. I can't run a game like that. But yeah, it's start with your story, start with your location and branch out to wherever you want. The trick is with sci-fi and with working with a galaxy is to not look at it as an entire thing, just look at it as an array of infinite options that you can choose from to, as far as your story goes, but it's limited to wherever you set it.
It's like eating an elephant. How do you eat an elephant? Just one bite at a
Yep.
time, right?
One bite at
But
a
if you
time.
if you
Yep.
think about the whole elephant, sure, it's impossible. But
Yes.
just take a bite. So we are just past the hour mark. Final thoughts before we head on out.
Uh, other than I hope that everyone can take a look at this. It's unique in the sense that you can play it however you want. You don't have to have Esper Genesis, even though we talked about it a lot. If you enjoy 5e or you enjoy D&D, you can take a look at the project that we have right now, and it'll introduce a lot of those
It's your
elements
gateway
without
drug into Esper
necessity. Yeah,
Genesis.
yeah, yep. That is right. It could be a gateway drug, or it could just be something really cool and fun
Yeah.
created by a lot of wonderful people.
So as always, thanks for coming on. Really appreciate it. In the description, you can find those links to check things out. Please do. Like I said, there's some free downloads you can go check out before you decide to back or buy anything. You can at least download those. And until next time, stay nerdy.